Hello, SSD, and I'm back with another video. Phil Spencer recently spoke with PC Games Hardware. This in-depth interview covered many hot topics, such as xCloud, Xbox Scarlett, and more. Phil even does a relatively deep dive into the Xbox Scarlett specs, and talks about the 4 times greater than Xbox One X performance that Scarlett will bring next generation. I encourage you all to read this in-depth interview, and the link is in the description down below. To start with, I will say Phil Spencer answered some of his critics on his E3 showing, and this is excellent, as in my opinion, in order to resolve issues with the brand, leadership must listen to the core. PC Games Hardware asked at previous E3 events, developers were on stage playing live. Phil responded, but usually not 18 months before release. And now, without entering into a debate with the internet, the fans wanted to see gameplay of Gears 5, but because Rod did not play a campaign on stage, they say there was no gameplay. Now, he goes on to say that he does understand why some people were disappointed. Now, there was Gears 5 gameplay, but it was all multiplayer that I seen at the E3 event. Hopefully, with the game not far out, we'll start to see some gameplay from the campaign emerge. Phil also touched on backwards compatibility with Xbox One games running on Project Scarlett. He went on to say, for Project Scarlett's design, we've made sure that games emulated today on the Xbox One will continue to work in the future. In other words, Xbox and Xbox 360 titles on an Xbox One today also work on Scarlett, and our goal is that all Xbox One games are playable on the Scarlett as well. If you have an Xbox Elite controller, that will work on the next generation too. PC Games Hardware asked, would that mean that Project Scarlett's announced quad performance could be used to make Xbox One titles look better? Phil's response was that you hit the nail right on the head. That's what we want the team working on the Xbox One to do it with the Scarlett. Because its members are not satisfied with just an old game running, they want to make it work better. Now, he also goes on to say that they have the best team in the world that works on their backwards compatibility. Now, I also found this part very interesting. He spoke on the SSD implementation that Scarlett will use to create a richer and seamless game world. He went on to say, thanks to the speed, developers can now practically use the SSD as a virtual RAM. The access times of the SSD approach the memory access times of the current generation of consoles. Of course, the operating system has to allow developers to approach access that goes beyond that of pure storage medium. The SSD will still be slower than GDDR6 RAM sitting directly on the die, but the ability to directly supply the CPU and GPU via the SSD will allow for the creation of game worlds that will not only be richer, but more seamless as well, not only in terms of pure loading times, but also terrain mapping. A graphic designer no longer has to worry about GDDR6 ending and where the SSD starts. I like the fact that Mark Cerny and his team are also investing in an SSD at Sony for the PlayStation 5. I get the picture from the last statement that Sony and Microsoft are developing similar approaches with perhaps distinctive techniques. Now, for me, the meat of this interview was the confirmation of Scarlett being 4 times more powerful than the Xbox One. Phil gave us some real insight with his response, saying that this is a pure CPU statement. It would also be a little too simplistic to refer to the whole system, as much as I would like to, because so many components flow into it. Take the Xbox One X. In its development, the memory bandwidth was the bottleneck. It had to be big enough to provide content to the GPU without idle time. We could have brought the console to the market a year earlier, but we waited another year to get all 6 of the GPU's teraflops up and running. Our primary goal with Scarlett was to improve the graphics capability of the GPU of the console, primarily because our goal was to integrate a CPU into the system that can compete with the GPU. Unlike PCs, consoles have historically been ARM presses with a strong ARM the GPU and a weak ARM the CPU, which does nothing other than change the frames calculated by the GPU as fast as possible, often with a maximum of 30 frames per second. Our primary goal with Scarlett was to improve the graphics capability and the GPU of the console. Now we're talking about 120 Hz or variable refresh rates. Because of the timing of the game loop, the core routines of a game correspond to the refresh rate. This reduces the input latency and thus ensures a smooth gaming experience, and that depends largely on the CPU and the memory bandwidth, and that's why you have a statement like Scarlett is X times faster than the Xbox One X. Now, I completely agree with his statement here. The 4 times CPU processing that it has over the Xbox One X is impressive. I also think there'll be more improvements on the GPU. I suppose as we get closer to the launch, they'll disclose more of this information. I would roughly guess a 2 times performance increase on the GPU. We know that Navi has new instructions, it has new capabilities, it has a higher bandwidth. All these things have to be taken into consideration, the GDDR6 RAM. So the console is not just going to be 4 times more powerful. The CPU is 4 times more powerful than the Xbox One X. We still don't know the GPU that they have in this system, how much more powerful it will actually be. Now, it's highly speculated that Scarlett will run a 2nd generation Navi RDNA 2 graphics processor. The next generation devices are looking extremely capable, pretty much like current high-end PCs. And I think it's amazing that we're talking about consoles at this high performance metric. Phil even said that the Scarlett is capable of 8K 120Hz, although he does kind of allude to that not being a realistic thing because developers would want to add other things to their game, so perhaps we could get 8K 30 from these next generation consoles. Honestly, to tell you guys, from cloud gaming to the next generation consoles, next gen is shaping up to be the greatest yet for gamers. The price point for the performance you will get with these will be unmatched by PC, somewhat blurring the lines. Absolutely, you'll be capable of building a better and higher performing PC. This will always be the case. However, I don't think you can be able to do it anywhere near what the Scarlett or the PlayStation 5 will be priced at. I want to know what you guys think about this information that we got today. I find it interesting that Microsoft is going to be using similar technology in their solid state drives to get faster load times, seamless worlds. Seems to be the same approach that Sony is taking with their PlayStation 5. 4 times the increase in performance on their CPU over the previous generation. We know that the GPU is going to be Navi based. We know that it's going to have hardware ray tracing. It looks like it's going to be a very capable machine. Anyways, let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Please leave your comments in the section down below. And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys on the next one.